A cocky young fighter publicly humiliates a 72-year-old boxing legend at a charity dinner, forcing the trembling old man to his feet and demonstrating chokeholds while mocking his Parkinson's disease. The arrogant bully livestreams the torture to millions, calling the champion broken machinery as his crew laughs at the elderly hero's shaking hands. But the quiet janitor mopping nearby isn't just another employee. This is Jackie Chan himself, researching undercover for a movie role. The punk has no idea he just disrespected a boxing legend in front of a martial arts master who spent 70 years perfecting the art of making bullies disappear. While the fighter taunts the helpless veteran about real fighting, the legend in janitor's clothes approaches with that deadly calm that has terrified criminals worldwide. The old boxer recognizes his unlikely savior and whispers a warning, knowing the young punk is about to learn why some mistakes can't be undone. The bully's entourage keeps filming, thinking they're capturing another viral humiliation, but they're actually recording the moment their leader picked the wrong old man to terrorize. What happens when you mock a champion in front of a living legend? Will the fighter survive his encounter with true martial arts mastery? What happened next would shatter the bully's arrogance forever. Before we jump back and tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Crystal chandeliers of the Palmer House Hotel's grand ballroom cast warm light over 300 guests dressed in their finest evening wear. The 47th annual Golden Gloves charity dinner buzzed with elegant conversation as Chicago's elite mingled with boxing legends from a bygone era. Black and white photographs lined the walls, fighters frozen in time, their gloved hands raised in victory, their eyes burning with the fire that had made them champions decades ago. PT the head table, Mickey Iron Fist, Romano adjusted his championship ring with trembling fingers. The 72-year-old former middleweight champion still carried himself with a fighter's dignity, despite the Parkinson's disease that made his hands shake like autumn leaves. His worn but pressed suit spoke of a man who maintained standards, even when money was tight. Remember when we could eat a steak dinner and still make weight? Bobby Lightning Martinez chuckled from beside him, his own 68 years showing in the careful way he cut his food around arthritic joints. Mickey smiled, his voice steady despite his condition. Those were different times, Bobby. Better times. Across the table, Sarah Steele Patterson nodded in agreement. At 64, she still possessed the no-nonsense bearing that had made her a pioneer in women's boxing, though her hip replacement forced her to walk with measured steps. At least the young folks still remember us old-timers, she said, gesturing toward the crowd of donors and journalists. Hammering, Hank Kowalski, 70 and managing his diabetes with careful attention to his dinner plate, raised his water glass. To the fighters who paved the way, he toasted quietly. The evening's master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor the warriors who built this sport with their blood, sweat, and unwavering courage. Every dollar raised goes directly to the Retired Fighters Medical Fund, ensuring our heroes receive the care they've earned. Applause filled the ballroom as the auction began. Mickey's 1954 championship gloves, displayed under spotlight, drew enthusiastic bidding. When the gavel fell at $15,000, Mickey's eyes glistened with gratitude. That money would help dozens of fighters afford their medications. But the warm atmosphere suddenly shifted. Near the entrance, security guards argued with someone trying to push past them. Heads turned as voices grew louder, the elegant evening's tranquility beginning to crack like ice under pressure. Derek, the demolisher, Vaughn burst through the main entrance like a storm breaking over calm waters. At 28, he moved with the predatory confidence of an undefeated fighter, his 6'2" frame wrapped in a $3,000 designer suit that couldn't disguise his hunger for confrontation. For members of his entourage flanked him, manager Tony Ricci in an expensive but nervous smile, two bodyguards who looked more like enforcers, and a social media manager already filming everything for Derek's 2.3 million followers. Sorry I'm late to the museum opening, Derek announced loudly, his voice cutting through the refined atmosphere like a chainsaw through silk. But don't worry, the real entertainment just walked in. Guests shifted uncomfortably as Derek swaggered between. Tables, his eyes scanning the room like a predator selecting prey. "Look at all these living fossils," he said, loud enough for his phone's microphone to capture every word. "Tell me, Grandpa," he addressed a 70-year-old former welterweight, "when exactly did you last win a fight?" The Eisenhower administration. Tony. Ricci distributed business cards with practiced efficiency while whispering apologies that fooled no one. The social media manager's livestream chat exploded with laughing emojis and fire symbols as Derek's followers ate up the disrespect. Event organizer Patricia Donnelly approached on unsteady legs, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Mr. Vaughn, you weren't invited to this private? Derek interrupted, his laugh sharp as breaking glass. "Lady, my promoter Vincent Torino sponsors half this charity show. That makes me practically the guest of honor." He gestured dismissively at the memorabilia displays. "Besides, someone needs to explain to these people what real fighting looks like in the 21st century." Patricia's protest died in her throat. Torino's sponsorship money kept the charity alive. Without it, dozens of elderly fighters would lose their medical support. Security guards received orders through their earpieces to stand down, their hands falling reluctantly from Derek's path. Derek's attention swept the room like a searchlight until it fixed on the head table. His grin turned predatory as he spotted Mickey Romano, the old champion's trembling hands making him an irresistible target. "Now there's a Real Museum piece," Derek announced, pointing directly at Mickey. "Hey, old man, want to show these people what championship fighting actually looked like back when dinosaurs ruled the earth?" The ballroom fell silent as 300 pairs of eyes focused on the confrontation about to unfold. The festive atmosphere died like a candle snuffed by cold wind. Derek approached Mickey's table with the slow, deliberate steps of a hunter closing on wounded prey. Conversations ceased mid-sentence as nearby diners pushed back their chairs, sensing violence in the air but feeling powerless to stop it. Mickey looked up from his dinner, his roomy but intelligent eyes meeting Derek's cruel stare without flinching. 50 years of fighting had taught him to recognize a bully, even one wrapped in expensive clothes. "Stand up, legend," Derek commanded, grabbing Mickey's elbow and hauling the frail man to his feet. "Let's give the people a demonstration." Mickey's trembling intensified under the stress, his Parkinson's symptoms worsening as Derek displayed him like a broken toy. "Look at this, folks," Derek announced to his livestream audience. The iron fist himself, more like broken machinery now, right? Hands shaking like he's got the DTs. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Derek positioned himself behind Mickey, wrapping his arm around the elderly champion's neck in a loose rear naked choke. "This is what we call a blood choke in real fighting," Derek explained to his phone camera, his voice taking on the tone of a cruel teacher. Old-school boxing was amateur hour compared to mixed martial arts. These fossils wouldn't last 30 seconds in a real cage. Mickey's face reddened as Derek tightened the hold just enough to make breathing difficult. The old fighter's dignity remained intact even as humiliation burned through him. He refused to beg or show fear, though his body betrayed him with increasingly violent tremors. "Please," Patricia Donnelly begged, her voice cracking with desperation. "He's an elderly man with a medical condition." "Medical condition?" Derek laughed, releasing the choke only to demonstrate an arm bar on Mickey's trembling limb. "The condition is called being old and useless. Maybe it's time to put the old dog out of its misery." Bobby Martinez started to rise from his chair, arthritis be damned, but Sarah Patterson caught his arm. At their age, they'd only make the situation worse. They could only watch helplessly as their friend endured systematic degradation. Derek's entourage encouraged the crowd to film, treating the torture like entertainment. Tony Ricci reminded Patricia about Torino's sponsorship money every time she protested. Security guards stood frozen, their earpieces crackling with orders to maintain distance. Derek prepared to apply another hold for educational purposes. A quiet voice spoke from behind them, the words carrying just a hint of accent. "Maybe you pick on someone who can fight back?" Derek spun around to see an Asian man in gray coveralls holding a mop, his name tag reading Jimmy. The crowd noticed the unassuming janitor for the first time, confusion replacing horror on their faces. The custodian stood quietly beside his cleaning cart, appearing utterly ordinary except for the calm intelligence in his dark eyes. "Jackie," Sean had perfected the art of invisibility, stooped shoulders, worn coveralls, a baseball cap pulled low over weathered features. To the elegant crowd, he looked like exactly what his name tag proclaimed: Jimmy the janitor, another invisible working-class employee maintaining their privileged world. But Jackie's internal monologue told a different story. For weeks, he'd been researching his upcoming role as a custodian-turned-hero, immersing himself in the daily reality of America's invisible workforce. The method acting had been enlightening, watching how people ignored him, spoke around him, treated him like furniture with a mop. Now, witnessing Derek's systematic cruelty toward Mickey, something deeper than professional research stirred within Jackie's chest. His lifetime respect for elders, his reverence for martial arts tradition, his hatred of bullies, all of it crystallized into cold fury that he kept carefully hidden beneath his humble facade. "Excuse me." Derek towered over the smaller man, incredulous laughter bubbling from his throat. "Did the help just challenge me?" Jackie maintained his cover perfectly, speaking in deliberately broken English with the humble posture of someone accustomed to being dismissed. "Old man, he deserves respect. You pick on someone who can fight, maybe." The crowd exchanged uncertain glances. Was this just an overprotective employee who didn't understand the gravity of challenging a professional fighter? Several guests whispered warnings about the janitor getting himself seriously hurt. Derek's grin widened as he realized the viral potential. Well, looks like Grandpa's got a friend." He addressed his livestream audience. "This is perfect. People, I'm about to give you a 2-for-1 special. Destroy the legend and his fan club in the same night." Mickey tried to warn the approaching custodian, his voice barely above a whisper. "Son, this man is dangerous." Is okay," Jackie replied softly, still maintaining his accent. "You sit. Rest. I take care of this problem." Something in the janitor's tone made Mickey pause. Despite the broken English and humble demeanor, there was steel underneath. The unmistakable confidence of someone who'd faced danger before and emerged victorious. Derek cracked his knuckles theatrically. "Tell you what, old man. Let's clear some space and settle this like men." He gestured toward an open area near the dance floor. "I'll try not to put you in the hospital permanently." The crowd formed a rough circle, some filming with trembling phones while others called for security to stop the madness. But Patricia Donnelly's hands were tied. Torino's influence meant the guards wouldn't intervene unless someone died. The makeshift fighting area buzzed with nervous energy as 300 guests formed an uncertain circle around Derek and the unassuming janitor. Phone cameras emerged like fireflies in the elegant lighting, some capturing what they expected to be a brutal beating, others documenting what felt like witnessing a crime in progress. Patricia Donnelly frantically dialed hotel security, her voice shaking as she pleaded for intervention. But the response crackled back through static. Orders from management. No interference with Mr. Torino's associates. Derek stretched ostentatiously, his designer suit jacket discarded to reveal the lean muscle beneath his silk shirt. He shadowboxed. For his audience, throwing combinations that whistled through the air with practiced precision. "Hope you've got good health insurance, Pops," he called out, bouncing on his toes like a predator preparing to pounce. Jackie remained motionless in the center of the space, removing his gray coveralls with methodical care. Underneath, his simple, white t-shirt and work pants revealed a deceptively lean frame. Not the bulging muscles of a gym warrior, but the functional strength of someone who'd spent 70 years perfecting his body as a weapon. "Jimmy, please don't," Mickey whispered from his ringside seat, his trembling intensifying as he watched the size difference between the two men. "He's a professional fighter. He could kill you." Jackie turned to the elderly champion and bowed. Respectfully, his broken English softening with genuine warmth. "Is okay, honored sir. I be very careful. You no worry about old Jimmy." Tony Ricci worked the crowd like a carnival barker, encouraging bets on the outcome. "Easy money, folks. My boy Derek's undefeated, 15 knockouts, 0 losses. This won't take 30 seconds." The social media manager adjusted his camera angle, anticipating the viral moment when Derek demolished another challenger. The livestream chat exploded with anticipation, viewers placing virtual bets on how quickly the janitor would fall. But something in Jackie's stance gave Mickey pause. Despite the humble posture and working-class clothes the custodian carried, himself with an almost imperceptible confidence. Weight perfectly balanced, feet positioned with unconscious precision, breathing controlled and steady. Derek assumed his fighting stance, fists raised, muscles coiled for explosive action. Last chance to walk away, old man. Jackie simply stood with his hands at his sides, looking almost defenseless as Derek charged forward with a devastating right cross aimed directly at his head. The makeshift fighting area buzzed with nervous energy as 300 guests formed an uncertain circle around Derek and the unassuming janitor. Phone cameras emerged like fireflies in the elegant lighting, some capturing what they expected to be a brutal beating, others documenting what felt like witnessing a crime in progress. Patricia Donnelly frantically dialed hotel security, her voice shaking as she pleaded for intervention. But the response crackled back through static. Orders from management. No interference with Mr. Torino's associates. Derek stretched ostentatiously, his designer suit jacket discarded to reveal the lean muscle beneath his silk shirt. He shadowboxed. For his audience, throwing combinations that whistled through the air with practiced precision. "Hope you've got good health insurance, Pops," he called out, bouncing on his toes like a predator preparing to pounce. Jackie remained motionless. In the center of the space, removing his gray coveralls with methodical care. Underneath, his simple white t-shirt and work pants revealed a deceptively lean frame. Not the bulging muscles of a gym warrior, but the functional strength of someone who'd spent 70 years perfecting his body as a weapon. "Jimmy, please, don't," Mickey whispered from his ringside seat, his trembling intensifying as he watched the size difference between the two men. "He's a professional fighter. He could kill you." Jackie turned to the elderly champion and bowed respectfully, his broken English softening with genuine warmth. "Is okay, honored sir. I be very careful. You no worry about old Jimmy." Tony Ricci worked the crowd like a carnival barker, encouraging bets on the outcome. "Easy money, folks. My boy Derek's undefeated, 15 knockouts, 0 losses. This won't take 30 seconds." The social media manager adjusted his camera angle, anticipating the viral moment when Derek demolished another challenger. The livestream chat exploded with anticipation, viewers placing virtual bets on how quickly the janitor would fall, but something in Jackie's stance gave Mickey pause. Despite the humble posture and working-class clothes, the custodian carried himself with an almost imperceptible confidence. Weight perfectly balanced, feet positioned with unconscious precision, breathing controlled and steady, Derek assumed. His fighting stance, fists raised, muscles coiled for explosive action. "Last chance to walk away, old man." Jackie simply stood with his hands at his sides, looking almost defenseless as Derek charged forward with a devastating right cross aimed directly at his head. Derek's powerful right hand cut through the ballroom air with the force of a sledgehammer, his 15 previous knockouts lending lethal weight to the blow. The crowd collectively gasped, several guests turning away rather than witness what promised to be a brutal conclusion to the evening's entertainment. But in the space between heartbeats, something impossible happened. Jackie moved like water flowing around stone. A subtle shift of his shoulders, a barely perceptible lean to the left, and Derek's devastating punch whistled harmlessly past his ear. The momentum carried Derek stumbling forward, off balance and confused. "What the?" Derek spun around, his confidence flickering for the first time. He launched into a combination that had dropped 3 professional opponents. Left jab, right cross, spinning back fist. Each strike was technically perfect, delivered with the precision of thousands of hours of training, and each one meant nothing but air. Jackie's movements flowed like silk in the wind. He wasn't dodging so much as simply existing in the spaces where Derek's fists weren't. A gentle lean backwards avoided a hook. A small step to the right made an uppercut miss by inches. His hands never rose to block. They simply guided Derek's attacks away like a master conductor redirecting an orchestra. The crowd's initial gasps transformed into confused murmurs. This wasn't what anyone had expected to see. Derek's technical skill was undeniable, but somehow the quiet janitor made him look like an amateur throwing wild haymakers in a bar fight. "Stand still, damn you," Derek snarled, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead despite the brief duration of the encounter. His strikes grew wilder, more desperate, each miss chipping away at his carefully constructed confidence. Mickey leaned forward in his chair, recognition dawning in his experienced eyes. He'd seen this kind of movement before, decades ago, in exhibition matches featuring masters from the Far East. This wasn't luck, this was artistry. Jackie continued his defensive dance, never once throwing a strike in return. His philosophy had always been to use an opponent's aggression against them, to prove that true martial arts meant not needing to hurt someone to defeat them. But Derek's frustration was building towards something dangerous. His breathing grew ragged, his technique sloppy, his eyes wild with the humiliation of being unable to touch his target. The final straw came when Derek attempted his signature finishing move, a spinning back fist that had rendered 3 professional opponents unconscious. Jackie caught Derek's wrist mid-spin with gentle precision, held it for just a moment, then executed a perfect Aikido throw that sent the undefeated fighter sailing across the marble floor. The grand ballroom erupted in stunned silence as Derek, the demolisher, Von lay motionless on the polished marble, his undefeated record shattered along with his consciousness. Jackie stood calmly over him, adjusting his baseball cap and checking that his opponent was breathing steadily but thoroughly unconscious. For a moment, time seemed suspended. 300 guests stared in disbelief at the impossible scene they'd just witnessed. A humble janitor had just defeated a professional fighter without throwing a single punch. Then recognition began to dawn. A young waiter near the back whispered to his colleague, "Oh my God, that's Jackie Chan." The whisper spread through the crowd like wildfire. Phones emerged everywhere as people realized they hadn't just witnessed a fight, they'd watched a living legend in action. The livestream chat exploded with shocked emojis and all-caps declarations of disbelief that Jackie's cover was blown, but he accepted it with characteristic grace. He removed his baseball cap, revealing the unmistakable features that had graced movie screens for 5 decades. His humble janitor persona melted away, replaced by the warm, self-deprecating smile that had made him beloved worldwide. "I apologize for the deception," he said, his English now perfect and unaccented as he approached Mickey. "I couldn't let this continue." The elderly champion struggled to his feet, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. You defended my honor," Mickey whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "A legend like you, standing up for an old fool like me." "The only fool here is unconscious on the floor," Jackie replied gently, steadying Mickey with careful hands. "You, sir, are a champion who deserves respect, not ridicule." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause. Guests who had sat paralyzed during Derek's bullying now cheered wildly for justice served. Patricia Donnelly wept openly, relief washing over her face as the nightmare seemed to end. Jackie helped Mickey back to his chair, ensuring the elderly fighter was comfortable before turning to acknowledge the crowd's adulation. He bowed humbly, his demeanor unchanged by their recognition, still the same respectful man who'd mopped floors in their peripheral vision. But the celebration was short-lived. Heavy footsteps echoed from the entrance, cutting through the applause. Like a blade, Vince Torino entered with 6 armed security guards, his massive frame filling the doorway. The applause died instantly as Torino's cold voice cut through the room. "Nobody leaves until I say so." The ballroom's celebratory atmosphere transformed into something sinister as Torino's armed men positioned themselves at every exit with military precision. Derek slowly regained consciousness, helped to his feet by a nervous Tony Ricci, whose face had gone pale as fresh snow. The elegant evening had become a hostage situation in the space of heartbeats. Vincent Torino approached, the center of the room with the confidence of a man who owned everything he surveyed. At 45, he still carried the build of his boxing days, though soft living had blurred the edges. His expensive suit couldn't disguise the predator beneath, and his cold eyes swept the crowd like a shark evaluating prey. Well, Torino said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "The great Jackie Chan. I should have known Derek's incompetence would flush out bigger fish." Jackie stepped protectively in front of Mickey, his martial arts training automatically assessing threats and escape routes. But with armed men at every exit and hundreds of innocent civilians in the line of fire, even his skills had limitations. Torino chuckled at Jackie's defensive posture. "Relax, movie star. You just made my job easier." He gestured to his men, who began herding the terrified guests away from the confrontation area. You see, tonight was never about Derek's ego or some charity dinner. The truth spilled out like poison. This had been orchestrated from the beginning, a carefully planned operation to humiliate Mickey Romano and force him to sign over his pension rights and valuable memorabilia collection. The charity auction had been reconnaissance, identifying which elderly fighters still possessed assets worth stealing. Mickey Romano's 1954 championship belt alone is worth $200,000, Torino explained casually. His autograph rights could generate millions over the next decade. But the stubborn old fool wouldn't sign my generous contracts. Mickey's Parkinson's tremors worsened as understanding dawned. You've been doing this to other fighters? Over 200 so far, Torino confirmed with pride. Systematic destruction of reputation, followed by predatory buyouts disguised as charity. It's a beautiful system, legal, profitable, and it cleans up the sport by removing these pathetic relics. The scope of his criminal enterprise became clear. Aging fighters across 12 states had been systematically targeted, their legacies destroyed through staged humiliations, their families threatened, their desperation exploited for pennies on the dollar. Derek here was supposed to finish you tonight, old man. Torino continued, nudging the still groggy fighter with his foot. Live-streamed humiliation, followed by a generous offer to buy your worthless memorabilia. Simple and clean. Jackie's jaw tightened as he processed the magnitude of the corruption. And now, Torino's smile turned predatory. Now the movie star becomes part of the show. Don't worry, I'll make sure everyone understands this was just another stunt gone tragically wrong. Torino's 6 armed men tightened their circle around Jackie, Mickey, and the other elderly fighters like a noose drawing closed. The 300 terrified guests huddled in their seats as orders crackled through earpieces to secure all exits. Jackie's eyes swept the elegant ballroom, cataloging every potential weapon and escape route in the space of heartbeats. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead like glittering opportunities. Round dining tables offered cover and projectiles. Serving stations lined the walls, their silver trays and utensils transforming into shields and weapons in Jackie's tactical mind. The raised stage provided elevation advantage, while the dance floor's polished marble could turn an opponent's footing treacherous. Take them alive, Torino commanded. I want this filmed properly. Jackie exploded into motion. He flipped the nearest dining table with explosive force, sending china and crystal cascading as the heavy mahogany became a battering ram that knocked 2 guards backward. Rolling across another table's surface, he snatched up serving trays that became gleaming shields, deflecting gunfire as guests screamed and dove for cover at a crystal chandelier became his highway through the air. Jackie swung from fixture to fixture, his legs pistoning out to strike multiple opponents simultaneously. The elderly fighters helped where they could. Mickey extended his cane to trip a charging guard, while Sarah Patterson swung her purse like a medieval flail, its contents creating a devastating impact. The formal dining setup transformed into Jackie's ally. Chair legs became staffs in his hands. Rolling dessert carts became missiles launched at pursuing guards. He slid under tables, vaulted over others, turned the elegant ballroom into a 3-dimensional battlefield where every surface supported his fluid combat style. Bobby Martinez, despite his arthritis, managed to overturn a serving station, sending hot coffee cascading across the marble floor. The scalding liquid and broken glass created a barrier that slowed their pursuers. Hank Kowalski's diabetes medication couldn't stop him from using his remaining strength to block a doorway with an overturned table. The chaos provided perfect cover as Jackie carved a path toward the kitchen service entrance. Guest panic worked in their favor. The screaming crowd made it impossible for Torino's men to get clear shots without risking civilian casualties. This way, Jackie shouted, helping Mickey navigate the obstacle course of overturned furniture and spilled food. He launched a rolling dessert cart into 3 pursuing guards, clearing their escape route. The kitchen door swung shut behind them as Torino's furious voice echoed, "Execute Phase 2. They won't get far." The service elevator's cables groaned as Jackie's group descended to the parking garage, their breathing heavy but controlled. Mickey's Parkinson's symptoms had worsened dramatically from the stress. his tremors now violent enough that Sarah had to help steady him as they moved toward Jackie's rented SUV. "Stay low," Jackie instructed, constantly checking mirrors and sight lines as they navigated through the concrete maze of parked cars. His martial arts training included escape and evasion, skills that served them well as they avoided the main exit routes where Torino's men would be waiting. The drive through Chicago's late-night streets felt like threading a needle. Every passing car could contain enemies. Every red light offered opportunities for ambush. Jackie's route twisted through side streets and alleys. His knowledge of the city enhanced by location scouting for previous films. Mickey's modest apartment building stood in a working-class neighborhood where gentrification hadn't yet reached. The three-story walk-up had seen better decades, but it offered something Torino's expensive operations couldn't: invisibility among ordinary people who minded their own business. Inside Mickey's cramped apartment, the full scope of his financial desperation became clear. Boxing memorabilia covered every wall, but empty spaces showed where pieces had been sold to pay mounting medical bills. Championship photos hung beside overdue notices from utility companies. Trophies from the 1950s shared shelf space with prescription bottles whose labels revealed the crushing cost of managing Parkinson's disease. "Started 6 months ago," Mickey explained, his voice shaking as badly as his hands. "Torino approached me with what seemed like legitimate offers. Said he wanted to help retired fighters by managing our collections, handling autograph sessions, setting up appearances." Jackie studied a stack of legal documents on Mickey's kitchen table, contracts disguised as partnership agreements that essentially signed over fighters' entire legacies for token payments. The language was complex enough to confuse desperate elderly people, but legally binding enough to steal everything they'd worked for. When fighters refused his help, Mickey continued, bad things started happening. Bobby Martinez in Denver, Sarah Patterson in Atlanta, Hank Kowalski in Detroit. All of them experienced incidents that destroyed their reputations and left them desperate for money. Sarah leaned forward, her hip replacement making sitting difficult. "They filmed me allegedly giving performance drugs to teenage students. Turned out to be vitamins, but by then my coaching license was revoked and my gym lost its insurance." The systematic nature of Torino's operation became clear: identify targets with valuable assets, destroy their reputations through staged incidents, then swoop in with predatory contracts disguised as salvation. Mickey's phone rang, the shrill sound cutting through their conversation like a blade. Bobby Martinez's terrified voice crackled through the speaker. "Mickey, they came to my gym tonight. 8 men with baseball bats. 24 hours to sign, or they finish what they started." The line went dead, leaving them staring at the phone. In horrified silence, Jackie commandeered Mickey's ancient computer with the efficiency of someone accustomed to rapid research. His film industry connections had taught him to access private investigators and security databases, skills that proved invaluable as Torino's criminal network unfolded across multiple screens like a malignant web. Shell companies in Delaware masked the true ownership of assets. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands held millions in stolen wealth. Financial records revealed systematic theft spanning 12 states and involving over 200 elderly fighters. What it seemed like isolated incidents of bad luck were actually coordinated attacks on America's boxing legends. Bobby "Lightning" Martinez, Jackie read from a Denver police report, lost his gym after a video surfaced showing him allegedly assaulting a teenage fighter. The victim disappeared immediately after the incident, never pressed charges, and the video was anonymously uploaded to social media. Mickey's face grew grimmer with each revelation. Bobby spent 40 years building that gym, trained dozens of Golden Gloves champions, kept kids off the street. One fake video destroyed everything. Sarah's case files from Atlanta told a similar story. Video footage allegedly showed her providing performance-enhancing drugs to teenage athletes. The substances later tested as basic vitamins, but not before. Her coaching license was revoked, her insurance canceled, and her reputation destroyed. The teenagers in the video had been paid actors with no connection to legitimate boxing programs. Hank Kowalski's Detroit situation was even more sinister. Torino's people had threatened his diabetic grandson's insulin supply, using the boy's medical dependency as leverage to force Hank into signing over his autograph rights and memorabilia collection. The contracts were structured as charitable donations, making them nearly impossible to challenge legally. The pattern is always the same, Jackie observed, cross-referencing financial records with news reports. Target identification through charity events, reputation destruction through staged incidents, followed by predatory contracts disguised as help. The scope was staggering. Torino had stolen championship belts worth millions, autograph rights, generating ongoing revenue streams, and even real estate holdings that elderly fighters had been forced to sell below market value. The charity dinner circuit had become his hunting ground, with legitimate organizations unknowingly providing access to potential victims. Dawnlight crept through Mickey's apartment windows as they compiled their evidence. Jackie's contacts had provided enough documentation to expose the entire operation: bank records, shell company filings, victim testimonies, and video evidence of the staged incidents. But as Jackie prepared to contact federal authorities, Mickey's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You have friends, Romano. That makes you dangerous. 12 hours. The message was accompanied by a photo that made Mickey's blood freeze. Emma, his 16-year-old granddaughter, walking across her college campus, completely unaware of the crosshairs now painted on her back. The abandoned boxing gym on Chicago's South Side looked like a monument to better times. Peeling paint revealed decades of weather damage, while cracked windows let in shafts of dusty morning light that illuminated a ring with torn ropes and canvas that had absorbed the sweat and blood of countless fighters. This was where Bobby Lightning Martinez had been hiding since fleeing Denver 3 days ago. Bobby emerged from the shadows like a ghost of his former self. The 68-year-old's legendary hand speed remained evident in his quick, nervous movements, but arthritis had swollen his knuckles and fear had hollowed his cheeks. Still, he carried himself with a fighter's dignity despite losing everything to Torino's systematic destruction. "Mickey, thank God you're alive," Bobby whispered, embracing his old friend with careful attention to Mickey's worsening tremors. "After what happened at the hotel, I thought, we're all targets now," Jackie interrupted gently. "But that means we can work together." Sarah Patterson arrived 20 minutes later, having driven through the night from Atlanta. Her coaching credentials were destroyed, her reputation in ruins, but her strategic mind remained sharp as surgical steel. Despite her hip replacement, she moved with the confident bearing of someone who'd broken gender barriers in boxing's golden age. Hank Kowalski brought the most disturbing news from Detroit. 3 elderly fighters had already signed Torino's contracts out of desperation, their life savings and memorabilia collections now feeding the criminal enterprise. 2 others had died under suspicious circumstances, both ruled heart attacks, but both occurring within days of refusing Torino's offers. "We're not just fighting for our dignity," Hank explained, his diabetes medication carefully rationed in a pill container that revealed how close he was to running out. "We're fighting for our lives. This bastard isn't just stealing from us, he's killing us." The group gathered around a makeshift table in the gym's center, their ages ranging from Jackie's 71 to Mickey's 72. By conventional wisdom, they should have been in rocking chairs, not planning a mission against an armed criminal organization. But their eyes burned with the fire that had made them champions in their respective fields. "What exactly are we up against?" Sarah asked, her tactical mind already working through possibilities. Jackie spread out printed documents, organizational charts, financial records, personnel files. "Torino has at least 30 men in Chicago alone, with networks in 11 other states. Professional security, corrupt officials, and enough money to make problems disappear." Bobby flexed his arthritic hands experimentally. "And what do we have?" Mickey looked around at his unlikely army. Aged bodies carrying champion hearts, physical limitations balanced by decades of experience, trembling hands that still remembered how to fight. "We have something he doesn't," Mickey said quietly. "We have honor, and we have nothing left to lose." As if summoned by his words, Hank's phone buzzed. The text message was brief but devastating. "Grandpa, men came to the house looking for you. They said to tell you the insulin gets more expensive every day." Time had run out. The abandoned gym's morning light cast long shadows across cracked concrete as Jackie faced his unlikely army. Each fighter bore the visible marks of their battles: Mickey's trembling hands, Bobby's swollen knuckles, Sarah's careful hip movements, and Hank's diabetes-related fatigue. But their eyes burned with the determination that had once made them champions. First lesson, Jackie announced, his voice gentle but firm. We don't fight their fight. We fight smart. He began with Mickey, studying the elderly champion's Parkinson's symptoms with analytical precision. Your tremor. It's unpredictable, yes? Use that. Make opponents think they know your timing, then surprise them. Under Jackie's guidance, Mickey discovered that his involuntary shaking could become a devastating feint. His footwork remained excellent despite his condition. 50 years of muscle memory couldn't be erased by disease. Jackie showed him how to channel his tremor into deceptive movements that would confuse younger opponents about his true intentions. Bobby's arthritis presented different challenges. His legendary hand speed was diminished, but not gone, and Jackie taught him to focus that remaining speed into surgical strikes. One perfect punch is worth 10 sloppy ones, Jackie explained, showing Bobby how to maximize damage while minimizing the stress on his inflamed joints. Sarah's hip replacement actually provided unexpected advantages. Her lower center of gravity made her incredibly stable, nearly impossible to knock down. Jackie demonstrated how she could use her condition as a weapon. Opponents expecting a mobile fighter would be unprepared for someone who fought like an immovable object, delivering devastating close-range strikes. Hank's diabetes required careful energy management, but his experience as a heavyweight had taught him pacing strategies that younger fighters never learned. Jackie showed him how to conserve strength for maximum impact, turning his need to fight economically into a tactical advantage. Your greatest weapon isn't your fists, Jackie told them as they practiced combinations adapted to their limitations. It's your experience. These young fighters have technique, but no wisdom. They've never faced opponents who've survived real wars. The training intensified as morning became afternoon. Each fighter rediscovered skills they thought were lost forever, their bodies remembering movements their minds had feared were impossible. As the sun reached its zenith, Jackie's phone buzzed with an unexpected message. Location shoot confirmed for tomorrow night. Underground Fight Club, West Side Warehouse District. Your consultant role begins at 8 p.m. The address made Mickey's face drain of color. That's Torino's main operation. Jackie's film industry credentials opened doors that would have remained locked to ordinary investigators. The warehouse complex sprawled across several city blocks, its legitimate movie consulting business providing perfect cover for Torino's criminal empire. Security guards waved him through the main gate, treating him like any other Hollywood consultants scouting authentic locations. Mr. Chan, welcome to Chicago's most authentic underground fighting venue. Torino's lieutenant greeted him, a thin man named Carlo who clearly hadn't recognized Jackie from the hotel incident. Mr. Torino is very excited about the film possibilities. The facility exceeded Jackie's worst expectations. Multiple warehouses connected by corridors formed a maze of criminal activity. The central building housed a professional-grade fighting ring where staged humiliation matches destroyed elderly fighters' reputations. Overhead cameras captured every angle, ensuring maximum viral potential for the degrading spectacles that a second warehouse contained business offices filled with legal documents, hundreds of contracts, financial records, and files on targeted fighters. Organized with corporate efficiency, Jackie's hidden cameras captured page after page of evidence while Carlo droned about authentic atmosphere and real street fighting culture. The main warehouse featured a legitimate underground fighting circuit that generated revenue and provided cover for the criminal activities. Young fighters battled for small purses while wealthy spectators placed bets, completely unaware that the real money came from systematically destroying elderly legends. We get the best footage in that center ring, Carlo explained proudly. The acoustics are perfect for capturing every impact, every grunt of pain. Very cinematic. Jackie maintained his consultant persona while documenting everything through concealed recording devices. His genuine knowledge of film production made his cover believable, even as he gathered intelligence that could destroy Torino's entire operation. Meanwhile, positioned around the complex's perimeter, the elderly fighters monitored different escape routes and communication points. Mickey watched the main entrance from a coffee shop across the street, his trembling hands making him look like just another elderly man struggling with his morning coffee. Bobby's speed allowed him to dart between observation points, mapping guard rotations and identifying weak spots in the security perimeter. Sarah's tactical intelligence proved invaluable as she coordinated their positions through coded text messages, while Hank's defensive instincts helped him identify potential ambush points where Torino's men might attempt to corner them. The tour concluded in Torino's private office, where Jackie's blood chilled at the sight of wall-mounted displays, championship belts, and memorabilia stolen from destroyed fighters, arranged like hunting trophies. Through the office window, he spotted Derek in the main warehouse, training aggressively for what appeared to be another staged humiliation match. An elderly man shuffled into the warehouse below. Frank "Thunder" Morrison, a confused-looking heavyweight from the 1960s who walked with a cane and appeared terrified of his surroundings. From Torino's office window, Jackie watched the systematic preparation for another elderly fighter's destruction. Frank "Thunder" Morrison, once a feared heavyweight who'd gone 12 rounds with Muhammad Ali, now shuffled across the warehouse floor like a man walking to his own execution. Derek stretched nearby, his movements sharp with renewed confidence. After his hotel humiliation, the operation unfolded with clockwork precision. Camera operators positioned themselves for optimal coverage while Torino's men prepared the legal paperwork Morrison would be forced to sign after his public degradation. The stage was set for another legend's fall from grace, but Jackie's team executed their infiltration flawlessly. Mickey accessed the business office through a service entrance, his shaking hands providing perfect cover as he posed as a confused elderly visitor who'd gotten lost looking for the restroom. Security guards dismissed him as harmless while he photographed financial records that revealed offshore accounts containing $12 million stolen from fighters. That Bobby's legendary speed, even diminished by arthritis, allowed him to slip through gaps in the security perimeter. He reached the trophy room where stolen memorabilia was displayed, his phone camera capturing evidence of systematic theft spanning decades. Championship belts worth hundreds of thousands, vintage gloves from famous matches, even personal items like wedding rings taken as collateral for Torino's predatory loans. Sarah's tactical brilliance enabled her to access the legal department, where she copied contracts that proved the systematic nature of the fraud. Pattern after pattern emerged, identical language used to deceive dozens of fighters, shell companies designed to hide stolen assets, and payment schedules structured to provide minimal compensation for maximum theft. Hank positioned himself in the communications center, his defensive instincts keeping him hidden while he monitored radio traffic between Torino's various operations. The intelligence he gathered revealed 5 more fighters being targeted that week, including a former world champion in Philadelphia whose grandson was being threatened with academic expulsion unless his grandfather signed over his autograph rights. Jackie continued documenting the main warehouse activities while maintaining his film consultant cover. The evidence they were gathering would be overwhelming: financial crimes, extortion, conspiracy, and enough witness testimony to bring down Torino's entire network. Victory seemed within reach as each team member successfully completed their assigned objectives. They had proof of the systematic destruction of America's boxing legends, documentation of millions in stolen assets, and evidence of ongoing threats against fighters and their families. Jackie prepared to signal for extraction, confident they possessed enough evidence to destroy Torino's empire. His earpiece crackled with Hank's panicked voice. "Jackie, we've got company. Torino just arrived with a full security team, and they're heading straight for the hidden positions. I think we've been made." Through the office window, Jackie watched Torino stride into the main warehouse, pointing directly at the concealed locations where each elderly fighter was hidden. The Torino's security team moved with military precision through the warehouse complex, their coordinated assault revealing intimate knowledge of each fighter's position. Jackie realized with growing horror that their careful infiltration had been anticipated from the beginning. Every hiding spot, every escape route, every tactical advantage had been compromised. From the office window, he watched helplessly as Mickey was dragged from the business office, his Parkinson's tremors worsening dramatically under the stress of capture. Bobby's legendary speed proved useless against 6 men who knew exactly where he'd try to run. Sarah's tactical brilliance meant nothing when the enemy had already mapped every possibility. Jackie attempted to escape through the office's rear exit, but Derek and 4 guards waited for him in the corridor. The young fighter's face showed a mixture of shame and determination, his earlier humiliation driving him to seek redemption through violence. Going somewhere, movie star. Derek sneered, though his eyes couldn't quite meet Jackie's. Time for the real show to begin. The devastating truth emerged as they were herded into the main warehouse. Tony Ricci, Derek's trusted manager, stood beside Torino with a satisfied smile. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical blow. Tony had been Torino's inside man from the beginning, feeding intelligence about Jackie's film consulting job and anticipating the likely infiltration attempt. "You really thought you could outsmart me?" Torino laughed as his men secured the captives with zip ties and chains. "Tony's been my eyes and ears in Derek's camp for months. When the great Jackie Chan started researching custodian roles, it wasn't hard to figure out what was coming. But the worst revelation was yet to come." Torino produced his phone, showing them a live video feed from a basement room elsewhere in the complex. Emma Romano, Mickey's 16-year-old granddaughter, sat bound to a chair in a cold, concrete cell. She was alive, but clearly terrified, her college dormitory kidnapping having been executed while the team focused on their mission. "Here's how this works," Torino announced to his captives. "You sign over every remaining asset, confess on camera to being washed-up frauds who lied about your accomplishments, and participate in a final humiliation show that will destroy what's left of your reputations. Do this, and the girl lives." Mickey's condition deteriorated visibly at the sight of his granddaughter in danger. The tremors became so severe he could barely speak, while tears of helpless rage streamed down his weathered cheeks. Or Torino continued with casual cruelty. "You can maintain your stubborn pride while I sell the little girl to some very unpleasant people who specialize in making problems disappear permanently." The contracts lay on a table beside video equipment designed to record their forced confessions. All their evidence had been confiscated and destroyed. Dawn was approaching, and with it, the live broadcast that would complete their destruction. Jackie tested his restraints, professionally installed and impossible to break without tools. The elderly fighters sat chained around him, their champion hearts broken by the sight of an innocent girl paying the price for their defiance. For the first time in his legendary career, Jackie faced a situation where all his skills meant nothing. The storage room felt like a tomb, cold concrete walls closing in around Jackie and the 4 elderly fighters. Their chains rattled against support beams as they tested their bonds, finding only the professional workmanship of men who understood restraint. Outside, the warehouse hummed with preparation for their final humiliation. Mickey slumped against the wall, his Parkinson's tremors so violent he could barely form words. The sight of Emma bound and terrified in that basement cell had shattered something fundamental in the old champion's spirit. "My granddaughter," he whispered through chattering teeth. "She's just a kid. This is my fault. Bobby's arthritic hands were nearly useless from the cold chains, his legendary speed reduced to painful, stuttering movements. Sarah's hip replacement sent shooting pains through her body in the uncomfortable position, while Hank's diabetes created dangerous blood sugar fluctuations without access to his carefully timed medications. Torino entered with video equipment and a stack of contracts, his satisfaction evident as he surveyed his broken captives. "Time for your close-ups, champions. The world's about to learn the truth about their precious heroes." The contracts were thorough in their cruelty, not just transferring assets, but forcing the fighters to confess on camera to being frauds who had lied about their accomplishments for decades. The live broadcast would reach millions permanently, destroying not only their reputations, but their families' honor for generations to come. Mickey Romano, Torino read from the script, will admit that his 1954 championship was fixed, that he never possessed real fighting ability, and that he spent 70 years lying to the public about his fraudulent career. Similar degradations awaited each fighter. Bobby would confess his speed was enhanced by illegal stimulants. Sarah would claim her pioneering achievements were publicity stunts, and Hank would admit to being a mob-connected fighter who threw matches for money. "And you," Torino addressed Jackie directly, "will explain to your millions of fans how you've been fooling them with movie magic and stunt doubles, that you're nothing but an old man playing pretend." The basement video feed showed Emma shivering. In the cold room, her teenage courage wavering as exhaustion and fear took their toll. The temperature was kept deliberately low to weaken her resistance. Another layer of psychological torture designed to break her grandfather's will. As Torino prepared to begin filming their forced confessions. A small metallic tapping echoed from the ventilation system above them, a rhythmic sound that Jackie's trained ear recognized as Morse code. Someone was trying to communicate from inside the building's air ducts, and the message spelled hope. GRANDPA. The Morse code tapping grew stronger and more confident, the rhythm spelling out Mickey's relationship repeatedly from the darkness above. Jackie's heart surged with possibility as he realized Emma Romano was not only alive, but actively attempting to communicate her location and status. The ventilation grate suddenly crashed to the concrete floor, and Emma dropped into the storage room with the fluid grace of someone far from helpless. At 16, she possessed the lean strength of a dedicated martial arts student, her 4 years of karate training evident in her controlled landing and immediate assessment of the situation. "Grandpa," she whispered, rushing to Mickey's side. But instead of the terrified victim everyone expected, Emma revealed hidden depths of courage and capability that ran deeper than teenage bravado. "I let them take me," she explained quietly as she worked on their chains with lockpicks she'd fashioned from air duct hardware. One guard thought he was capturing a helpless college girl. "I waited until he got overconfident, then used what you taught me about fighting dirty, Grandpa." Mickey's tremors eased slightly as hope returned to his eyes. "Emma, sweetheart, you shouldn't be here. These men are dangerous. More dangerous than you were at your age," she interrupted with a Romano family smile. "I've been crawling through these ducts for 2 hours, mapping the entire complex. Most of Torino's security is focused on the main warehouse preparing for your broadcast. The rest of the building is practically empty." Emma had gathered crucial intelligence during her reconnaissance. Torino kept weapons in a storage room 3 levels down. Derek was being held in a separate area, apparently his refusal to participate in the final humiliation had made him a liability rather than an asset. Multiple escape routes existed through service corridors that security had ignored. Plus, Emma added with teenage confidence, "I overheard something important. This whole operation depends on the live broadcast. If that fails, Torino loses his main source of psychological leverage over other fighters. He needs you broken and confessing to maintain his reputation for destroying legends." As Emma freed the last chain, alarm bells began blaring throughout the complex. Their escape had been discovered, and heavy footsteps echoed in the corridors outside. Jackie checked his watch, 4:30 a.m. The live broadcast was scheduled to begin in 3 hours, giving them a narrow window to turn the tables. "The building's layout works in our favor," Emma explained as they prepared to move. "It's designed like a maze to confuse intruders, but I know every corridor now. Follow me and stay quiet." The storage room door burst open as they slipped into the ventilation system, Torino's furious voice echoing behind them. "Find them. Every exit is sealed. They can't get far." But Emma Romano had inherited more than her grandfather's determination. She'd also inherited his fighter's instinct for finding victory when defeat seemed certain. The warehouse complex transformed into a battlefield as Jackie led his group through corridors filled with industrial obstacles that became weapons and shields in his hands. Torino's 20-man security force spread through the maze of connected buildings, but Jackie's environmental fighting style turned every piece of equipment into an advantage. Hydraulic forklifts became catapults, launching crates at pursuing guards. Conveyor belts provided moving platforms for Jackie's acrobatic assaults. Chains hanging from ceiling cranes became swinging highways that allowed him to strike multiple opponents from unexpected angles. His movements flowed like water through the industrial landscape, each obstacle transforming into an opportunity. The elderly fighters contributed within their physical limitations, their decades of ring experience translating into tactical advantages that younger opponents couldn't anticipate. Mickey's knowledge of the building's layout from previous business meetings with Torino proved invaluable. He guided them through service corridors that security had overlooked. That Bobby's diminished but still present speed allowed him to dart between cover points, creating distractions while Jackie engaged the main threats. His arthritic hands might struggle with fine motor control, but they could still deliver devastating strikes when the opportunity arose. Sarah's tactical intelligence coordinated their movements through hand signals developed during their training sessions. Her hip replacement limited mobility, but her strategic mind identified weak points in the security formation that Jackie could exploit. She directed their retreat toward areas where environmental advantages were maximized. Hank's diabetes required careful energy management, but his heavyweight experience had taught him to fight economically. He conserved strength for crucial moments, using his remaining power to move heavy obstacles that created barriers between them and their pursuers. Emma's agility made her an excellent scout and messenger, her small size allowing her to slip through gaps that would trap adult pursuers. Her martial arts training wasn't at Jackie's level, but it was sufficient to handle isolated guards who underestimated teenage opponents. The running battle moved through different warehouse sections, each presenting unique challenges. The business office area offered filing cabinets as shields and desk chairs as projectiles. The equipment storage zone provided tools that became improvised weapons. The loading dock featured truck ramps that Jackie transformed into launching platforms for aerial attacks. But as they fought their way toward the main warehouse, the reality of their situation became clear. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of places to retreat. Torino's men were herding them exactly where he wanted them. The central arena where the broadcast equipment waited. Jackie realized they would have to make their final stand in the boxing ring where Torino had planned to destroy them. The irony wasn't lost on him. These fighters would face their destiny in the place where champions were meant to prove their worth. The main warehouse's boxing ring became the arena for their final confrontation, elevated platforms surrounded by broadcast equipment and professional lighting that would have showcased their humiliation to millions. Now it served as the stage where legends would either reclaim their honor or die trying. Jackie and the elderly fighters removed their outer clothing to reveal they wore their original boxing gear underneath, leather gloves cracked with age, shorts bearing the colors of long-dead gyms, boots that had carried them to glory decades ago. Emma had retrieved the equipment from Mickey's apartment during her intelligence gathering, understanding instinctively that these warriors needed to face their final battle dressed as the champions they'd always been. Torino's remaining 15 men surrounded the ring, but the elevation and professional lighting created unexpected advantages. The platform gave the fighters higher ground, while the broadcast illumination cast sharp shadows that Jackie used to confuse opponents about his true position. The battle became a celebration of each fighter's legendary style, adapted for their current limitations, but retaining the essence that had made them champions. Mickey's footwork remained poetry in motion despite his Parkinson's, his tremors actually creating deceptive feints that made younger opponents misjudge his timing completely. Bobby's lightning found its target with surgical precision. His arthritic hands delivered fewer punches, but each one carried the accumulated wisdom of 40 years in the ring. Opponents expecting diminished speed discovered that experience could compensate for physical decline. Bobby's combinations arrived exactly when and where they would cause maximum damage. Sarah's body shots devastated opponents who had never faced a female fighter and didn't understand her unique advantages. Her lower center of gravity made her nearly impossible to knock down, while her strategic mind identified weaknesses that pure physicality missed. She fought like a chess master, every movement calculated for maximum effect. Hank's defensive skills, honed over decades of absorbing punishment from heavyweight monsters, made him virtually untouchable despite his diabetes-related fatigue. He moved like a fortress with fists, letting opponents exhaust themselves against his guard before delivering counters that ended fights with single blows. Emma's agility complemented their experience perfectly. She darted between opponents, using her grandfather's teachings about leverage and timing to multiply her limited strength. Her youth provided the mobility their age had taken, while their wisdom guided her inexperience toward victory. Jackie coordinated their efforts while fighting his own battles, ensuring each elderly fighter faced opponents they could realistically defeat while he handled the most dangerous threats. The ring became a symphony of violence conducted by a master who understood that true victory came not from individual brilliance, but from perfect teamwork. As the tide turned in their favor, Derek appeared at the warehouse entrance, but instead of joining Torino's forces. He was fighting against them, his face showing cuts and bruises from his own rebellion against the criminal empire that had enslaved him. Derek crashed through the warehouse window, glass cascading around him as he grappled with 3 of Torino's men. Blood streamed from cuts on his face, evidence of prolonged fighting since his rebellion began hours ago. "My mother's in the hospital," he shouted over the chaos, his voice cracking with desperation. "Torino's been blackmailing me for months, threatening her insulin, her dialysis treatments." Jackie's estimation of Derek shifted instantly. The young fighter's arrogance had masked a son's desperate love, his cruelty born from impossible choices rather than inherent evil. Derek's genuine MMA skills, now serving justice instead of ego, proved devastating against Torino's remaining forces. His technical precision combined with righteous fury created a fighting machine that carved through opponents like a blade through paper. "I'm sorry," Derek gasped to Mickey between exchanges. "Forgive me, please." Jackie kicked open Torino's office door to find the crime boss waiting in boxing gear, his expensive suit discarded for the final confrontation. Stolen championship belts lined the walls like hunting trophies. "Time to finish this properly," Torino snarled, his fists raised with the skill of his forgotten professional days. FBI agents flooded the warehouse complex as dawn broke over Chicago. Agent Rebecca Martinez led the federal task force, her father Bobby's evidence proving crucial for prosecutions across multiple states. But Torino's $12 million in offshore accounts would fund victim compensation. Derek established the Romano Foundation, with Mickey as director, ensuring no fighter would face such exploitation again. 6 months later, the Palmer House Ballroom celebrated the Romano Foundation's success. Mickey's tremors had improved with proper medical care. Derek humbly asked for boxing lessons. Emma received her martial arts scholarship. Jackie watched from the balcony as legends never truly retired. They just found new ways to inspire generations. If you liked the story, please watch another story on our channel and subscribe to the channel.